Welcome back to our Band of Brothers cast reunion. This is part 2, and today we teed you up at the end of yesterday's to start talking about filming. Let's just get started again. Philip Barantini, who played Skinny Sisk, you've got big Hollywood sets. Were you treated like big Hollywood stars?
We all had honey wagons, with our names on. It was all very Hollywood. But we weren't allowed to go in them at first. I'd say for probably the first month, because we all had to get changed in this huge tent all together.
Richard Speight, who played Skip Mark, go ahead.
We had trailers, but we basically were in that tent. I mean,
yeah,
it was more like we were circus performers, and we had like a little nook.
Yes, Jimmy Madio, who was Frank Picante.
Yeah. The bottom line is, Rick Warden could tell you, if you were caught in your trailer, we went and took shits in your trailer, and we didn't.
What's the rule? Which is why I don't remember my trailer, because I took that threat seriously.
I'm going to tell you.
Scott Grimes, who played Don Malarkey.
You had a scene to do. It's like if you had speaking scene, you were allowed to go in your trailer. Other than that, right? Am I wrong? That was
yeah.
Philip, even getting to set was done in character, wasn't it?
They made us march from the base to the sets, which were like, maybe a mile, all on this huge complex, which was an old British aerospace plot where they used to build parts for planes, which was shut down. So they used the air hangars as sets. So we used to have to line up in formation, in character, and march to the set, and we did that every day for 9 months, really. And I think partly that's the reason why it is so authentic, the show, because of people like Dale Dye who were drilled us every day. But yeah, being in character was just normal.
Jimmy, and everyone has said I'd never seen a set that size before, but you hadn't you? You'd been on Hook. Did it still surprise you, the scale of Band of Brothers?
Well, yeah. I mean, it was big. It was a lot going on. I don't know how many acres it was, but there was villages and towns, and I mean everything you could imagine. Hook was, what was that, 91? So 10 years prior, Hook took over the entire lot as well, and you had ships, pirate ships in Neverland, and I remember that those sets were so big that everybody was bringing their kids on. Every big star was showing up to that set. I think Prince showed up, Madonna showed up, Bruce Willis at the time. All these huge people showed up to kind of see the set. But you were in Hollywood, so they were able to do that. But the sets were really, really big then. But Band of Brothers just seemed like it was 10 times bigger than Hook could ever be.
Mark Lawrence, you played Dukeman. You had early dialogue. Was it scary?
First thing was on the airfield, and there's maybe 400 or 500 extras, and I stand up and say something, and I'm like, oh, do not fuck this up. I mean, you're just thinking, you got camera cranes going everywhere, you got 400 extras, you got this, that, the other, and I mean, it's a Steven Spielberg, Tom Hanks production, and you're like, oh my God, please don't stumble. But it's amazing. It's amazing. I mean, it's stuck with me like the rest of the boys, I'm sure. It'll never leave us.
How many takes?
Oh, only one. Come on, man. Boom, hit that.
Ben Caplan, you played Smokey Gordon. What do you remember of the early filming?
I think if my memory serves me rightly, and forgive me if I'm a bit vague, I think we did a lot of night shoots to start off with, I'm pretty sure. I remember lots and lots of cold night shoots, doing all of that stuff, running up and down Carentan, and the stuff with the water bottle and Michael Fassbender, with David Trimble, all of that stuff in the night marches and stuff. I think we did a lot of that early doors. So there was a lot of big company scenes being shot early on, and that was pretty intense because we were working all hours, in the middle of the night. But again, brilliant experience to be able to kind of get that many guys together so that we can continue, enjoying each other's company. Because I think that camaraderie was really, really important. So by the time we came back from boot camp, and then we had a lot of those big sequences to shoot, and we were able to continue where we left off.
And staying with Ben, you want to mention the attention to detail on set, don't you?
Yeah, I mean, incredible. The sets were absolutely incredible. And that's one of the other things that I've been reminded of recently, because a lot of people have been posting quite a lot of photos of the set and stuff. And I mean, you still look at those sets now and you think, we're 20 years down the line and those sets were incredible, then. And they stand up now, the level of detail. I remember just looking at the guys that were sort of painting tiny bits of color in the wall and the buildings and stuff. And then when we went to Carentan for real, Paul will vouch for this. We went to Carentan for real, and you kind of then go, oh my God, I remember this set, and they have matched this detail incredibly well. Because obviously I'd never been to the real location, so to go into Carentan was very, very special. When we went to Bastogne, it was very, very special to be able to see the woods, and then actually to see what they recreated inside a sound studio. I mean, that was incredible to ship, however many 300, 400 trees over from Belgium and create the kind of the woods. I mean, it was just brilliant production design, really, really, really stunning. And as I say, to this day, I've worked on many sets, but I've never worked on anything quite as amazing as Band of Brothers. And the amount of sets as well, the amount of different locations they had to produce was quite incredible. And I don't live very far away from there now, so I sometimes go up to Hatfield, and obviously the studio is not there because they got rid of it, and now it's a gym. In fact, I used to belong to a gym that is in one of the hangars where we shot Band of Brothers. So it's quite incredible to go back in that hangar now and to see that it's a David Lloyd gym and not a World War II hangar where we shot Band of Brothers. But yeah, incredible, really, really incredible.
Rick Warden, who played Harry Welsh, what about you?
I can remember being on the set in that, and listen, the town set, the Carentan set, was massive. It was a fucking town, really.
Incredible.
And I can remember Spielberg saying that one of the walls wasn't dirty enough. This is when I was gathering the platoon together in that town square. He literally was like, "We're going to have to dirty up that wall," and it was like, what, in a massive bombed out town? That's the kind of, and isn't it true, Michael? You might know this, or one of the other guys who were in. I wasn't in Ep 2. But my recollection is that some things needed to be reshot in Ep 2 because of the pullback on the M1 wasn't quite right.
Kick on the, yeah.
Right? The kick wasn't up, it was back. Yeah. And he basically said, it's got to be up, guys.
Michael Cudlitz, of course, he was ball rounderman. What do you remember about Carentan and learning as you go, and not just the cast, but the crew as well?
That was our first sort of large-scale group battle. So I think that they were like with the pilot or the first episode when we had to go back and they learn stuff. You learn if we kill people in episode 6 and 7 and we didn't get to know them well enough early on, then it doesn't have the impact that it should. So I think that for everyone, including the filmmakers, it was a process, and they realized, as Rick was saying, hey, that doesn't look right. That's not what it did. This is what it did. And then they were like, all right, we're going back in. We're going to make that wall dirtier, and we're going to make the kick accurate. And that was the sort of the commitment from everyone doing it. And we were all like, oh, okay, if it's not right, let's go back and do it again.
Ben, how real did it all feel?
Yeah, and again, I think one of the great experiences of obviously we've talked about boot camp, but then when we actually got on the sets and the authenticity of the sets themselves, they were so real. And once those battle sequences started, it did feel very real. So it felt for an actor, it made our job much easier, because you just kind of thought, what if this was me in this situation? Yeah, and once all of that, once all of that stuff kicks off, once the explosions and the squibs and everything else start firing up, you kind of just go into kind of survival mode. And a lot of that training does kick in, but then a lot of that training goes out the window. And as I'm sure that it did with the real guys, you can't prepare for combat, because, once you get in it, you kind of go, wow, this is very different to what we've been doing in training. And you just have to kind of have that survival mechanism kick in and think, all I need to do is worry about, myself and my friends around me, and just make sure that we try and get through this, make sure that we don't lose our lives. So that survival instinct kicks in.
The crew must have worked as hard as you guys. Mark?
Yeah, I mean, crew are the unsung heroes of it. I mean, luckily, a lot of them are known. There's a guy called, I'm sure Paul knows, Joe Hobbs, who was an amazing guy, and he was basically dedicated his life to this production. That's how it seemed, and everybody was like that on set.
Paul, our Bobfest coordinator, you've got a question for Rick?
Well, I was going to say, I remember talking to you, Rick, in Bastogne in 2016, and we were walking in. We just parked up, hadn't we? And we walked in, and you must have said 20 times in a row, "This is like being on the set. It's just like being on the set. It's just like being on the set." You told us about the belt. If I recall correctly, they brought in even trees from Belgium or something, didn't they? And they spaced them out exactly at the same distance.
You know,
You were
Joe
completely
Hobbs,
freaked
God
out
rest
by
his
it, weren't you?
soul, our costume designer.
Joe
I'm pretty
was
sure
amazing.
that, or certainly high up in costume, whether he was the designer or not, right down to the patches, the number of stitches in the patches, the leather that the corker and the boots were made out of. You know, I'm pretty sure there were trees from there were either trees from Belgium or there's something about that in the story.
Yeah, they were. The trees were imported. Yeah, Joe Hobbs, when the first batch of shirts arrived, he took them out of the packet and he looked at them and he went, "Oh dear, the thread count's wrong." And production were like, "Well, what do you want to do?" He said, "Well, we can use them if you want." And they said, "But will it be authentic?" And he said, "Well, no, they won't be."
Matt Settle, you played Lieutenant Spears. How do you remember the authenticity efforts, especially the stuntmen?
I remember Ian Bailey saying, played Webster, saying he remembers pulling the trigger in a shot and a stuntman falling exactly when he pulled the trigger. He's aiming at someone and he pulls the trigger in a big battle scene, and then that person falls exactly when he pulls the trigger.
Yes, Rene Moreno, who played Joseph Ramirez.
That attests to the best stuntmen working at that time too with us. It was amazing.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Rick Warden.
I mean, I had moments during some of Ep 3 when we did the big tank battle in the field.
Yeah.
Just the sort of size of the task in hand that we were doing, the amount of
tanks were
mechanized
real.
sort of violence there. I mean, the reset on the tanks, when it came through the hedge, it was like a 2.5 hour reset, man, because you had to back
you were
the
with
tank
us that
up,
day where the
build
guy
the
went
flipping-
under the tread. Right?
Exactly. Yeah. That was the weirdest.
I was
that
like,
was for
what
me,
the
surreal.
hell?
Yeah.
There
It was the most extraordinary stunt.
Spring-loaded
Yeah,
board,
it's
he would
like
fall on, and then it would push him down. And he was literally rolled over by the tank.
He's got to be
The
trusting for
set up.
that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
That was
He
impressive. I love that
he
episode.
did 2 takes of it, I think, and he made a lot. It was one of the most expensive stunts on the show. I understand.
So what was it?
And it
Was
was
it
like
a trap?
it was like a sort of
died.
no, it was like a coffin
built-
shape,
built
and he would
something.
crawl. It was more scary even than we're describing. He would crawl on solid
Right.
ground
You crawl
to a
that
place that he knew wasn't, and then be crushed into the hole by the tank.
Oh my
And his
God.
helmet
And it was
was
spring-loaded.
just outside the tank, just
Yep.
outside the hole, so it crushed.
The weight of the tank would push him down.
Yeah.
Episode 4, the replacements. You get all these new guys coming in. How did you treat them? Because weren't you told to treat them like pariahs? Like, don't be nice to them. Rich.
You know, to be honest, I know we were told that, but we also just kind of did it because we were dickheads at the time. I mean, we had bonded in our own way, and when somebody would come on and they'd have shiny boots and their uniform, it just made us mad. I mean, I don't know what to tell you. You know, the psychology worked kind of.
Ben, how real did it all feel?
We all went through that, that experience of what the hell is this? And I think when you turn up late, the fact is, that the replacements got given quite a lot of stick about the fact that they hadn't been to boot camp. And it was exactly the same as what happens in episode 4, what happens in the scenes when they turn up. So they were given the same amount of grief as actors, and any actor that turned up sort of, later into filming were kind of ignored or given quite a hard time at the beginning. And I think some actors, some famous actors famously have spoken about this in interviews, and they said, that they turned up on set and it was quite a hostile atmosphere, but there was a reason for that. And some people didn't like it and thought it was, a bit of nonsense, but actually, that's how we'd been trained. And, I think it was just natural that was going to happen.
Robin Laing, you played Babe Heffron. There's a South Philly connection there, isn't there, with Garnier? So when you came in, if everybody's in character, did you get a slightly easier ride in terms of being a replacement?
I was given a slight pass to an extent. Or certainly I think I was maybe welcomed into the fold quite readily because of who Babe and Bill were. I remember coming for my costume fitting and being shown into the big marquee that everyone got changed in and kind of, you know, relaxed in, and people being quite kind of like, oh, babe's here, where's Belle, and somebody went and got Frank and kind of, you know, brought him over so we could, you know, to introduce us, and we chatted and stuff. And so yeah, there was, I guess I was kind of given a bit of a pass, but by the same token, I remember being going through the same things, you know, where early on you'd put your rifle down and go away to do something, and you turn back around and your rifle's gone, and then you're like, oh man, you know, and you're just waiting for one of the cadre to walk past and go, where's your rifle? And you're like, I don't know. And they're like, drop and give me 10, you know. So I had to go through that as well.
Right, so there's a great incident that illustrates what we're talking about with Robin, push-up gate, which Rich has talked about. Let's incorporate your take on it.
I don't remember the group of guys, but I can leap forward and assume it was Gomez, Madio, Grimes, like the usual suspects, and a new guy came in. And you know how, like, sometimes it wouldn't be necessary that we would be, quote unquote, mean to somebody, but there was also sort of a rite of passage of, you're the new guy. Oh, nice to meet you, man. You're going to need to give me 20 push-ups. Yeah. Like, it would just be in passing. And I know that Farnsworth, Freddie Joe would, you know, warn the dudes, hey, you're going to set, you know, this is how this is going to play out. You're probably going to get that request, whatever.
I remember sort of pushing against that at one point.
The group said, you're going to need to give us 20. And he's like, nah, screw you guys. And like, no, you're going to need to give us 20. And he's like, no, screw you guys. And now it's going like this. You know, now it's a couple guys standing up on the chair like, I don't think you understand what we're saying. We're not asking you. You're not hearing a question mark at the end of the sentence. You're going to need to give us 20 push-ups.
Because I'd say, I'm not doing fucking push-ups, you know. and not to one of the cadre. It was another cast member had said, oh, you don't know where your rifle is, you know, give me 20. And I can't remember who it was, but I was like, nah, you know, if one of the cadre give me push-ups, fine. But I'm not taking it off another member of cast, you know.
And it was starting to get heated. The guy's like, you know, fuck you guys. And I pulled that dude aside and sort of took off the mask for 20 seconds.
Yeah.
And said, hey, man, here's how this is going to play out. I know we're making a movie, and I know we're all actors, but we've all been in the trenches since the word go, and you're arriving here, and this is sort of your rite of passage. This is your secret handshake. You have two choices. Do the 20 push-ups, or don't do the 20 push-ups and make this a miserable experience for yourself for the remainder of the shoot.
Yeah.
Is it worth that? No, it's not worth that. So I think this guy who did his 20 push-ups, everybody left him alone. It's like he did his 20 push-ups, and everybody was like, that's all we asked, dude.
Yeah. And so I was kind of like, all right, yeah, fuck it. So I did it. I remember doing it was 20 I had to do. And as I was approaching 20, I think I remember vividly, Frank was there. And he was like, go on, babe, go on. Now give me 30. Go for 30. And so I kept going. And I remember and people pushing me to 40. And then I managed to do 50. And when I got to 50 and then, you know, I got up and everybody was really like, yeah, you know, and Frank gave me a big hug and people were kind of patting me on the back. And I suddenly realized how right Richard Speight, I think, I'm sure it was Richard, how right he was to kind of, you know, push me to do that. You know, he, you know, how important it was that I bought into it, that thing. So I kind of got a free pass, but to an extent, but yeah, I had that little thing.
Because I don't think any of those people who did catch shit as a replacement, you know, sure there would have been an initial, you know, reluctance or tough time they would have had to come through, because that was kind of what was instructed to do. And I suppose, you know, we'd all had a tough time and it felt right passing it on a little bit. But it's not like it went on forever and ever and we were complete shits to everybody else.
There was a lot of new guys that came in and they were there for, like, you know, for the duration of the show. And that hazing stopped, you know, week 2 or whatever.
Yeah.
A lot of these guys came in for one episode. And I think the guys that came in for one episode had a tough time because they didn't understand what the makeup of the movie was. And so they would come in, they would kind of get their balls busted a little bit, and then walk away going, fuck that. That was miserable. Whereas the people that stuck around because their character...
It doesn't matter. The thing was, it was a mindset, you know, that this is all part of, you know, that was all part and parcel of what we were all drawn into. That's the thing. We did get thrown into the madness of that boot camp. And it's like, it was 24 hours a day for 10 days. It wasn't like you ever went, okay, guys, you know, clock off. There was no clocking off. It was 240 hours continuous.
Scott, yes.
As long as they're like, I'll never forget, we have to give like Colin Hanks a credit because he came on, we gave him shit, and he dealt with it really well.
Yeah.
He played the game on his side really well, so.
Definitely, because I think two man, the people that we've spoken to that were replacements did hang around for a while, and not one of them, they've all like laughed and joked about the hazing and how shit it was, but not one of them.
Robin, Pesci, all those guys.
Pesci, yeah.
Yeah, they were there throughout it. Babe had fun.
Ross McCall, who played Joseph Liebgott.
You know, there were actors, and we got the actor kicked out of us in boot camp. Like, the actor bullshit was knocked out of us early on. Other guys were coming in, and they just finished RADA, or they just finished a theatrical run, and they're coming in, and a bunch of Americans are kind of giving them bullshit, and they're going, what is this? They're in one episode, they go away, and they go, no, not that. It was like a crazy bunch of lunatics. And they didn't really understand the fabric of the show because they weren't there for long, you know?
Yeah. Some of the cast who are little more than extras in Band of Brothers have gone on to be really famous. How much crap did they get? Mark, let's go to you.
But the replacements when it came to episode 4, they never really been doing it for a few months. I mean, they got most of the grief. I mean, I made a guy called Dominic Cooper, and I can't remember his character. But I made him do push-ups, and I think he wrote about it in the paper like 15 years later, saying how traumatized he was by it all.
This is a star of Preacher now, right?
There you go. I carry that around, but I mean, he got his payback. He's a very rich young man now.
Yes, Tim Matthews, who played Alex Pancala.
I have this story that I remember. I hope somebody can back this up. I think maybe Rich or Scott was there. We were having lunch one day, and James McAvoy, who at the time obviously was just, you know, came and had lunch. He was talking to us, and I think it was Rick Gomez.
Yes, sir, it was. I know the story.
There were some mum jokes going on, and they was funny for us. And then James McAvoy made the mistake of making a mum joke to Rick Gomez. And he launched across the table at him and grabbed him and started threatening him, like, very seriously. He was really affronted by the fact that, because he'd overstepped the line. Like, no, we can do the mum jokes. Yeah. You're a fucking new guy. You don't get to do it. I was a little bit worried. I honestly thought we were going to get a black eye out of it. Somebody was going to get a black eye.
I also remember Tom Hardy getting a fucking tough time when he came in as well. Tom Hardy.
Me and Rick gave him a tough time on the back of that fucking dude.
Basically, we just picked on anyone that we knew were going to be movie stars. That's what it was. We just picked on ones that were going to blow up.
Give us the Tom Hardy stories. George Calil, you played Mo Ali.
The concentration camp. Tom Hardy, it was the first scene he ever did, as he told me. And he's now a big movie star, God bless him. And Tom threw up in his helmet, for real. At the concentration camp, Alina.
No.
And I don't.
Are you talking about Tom Hardy?
How did you know, man?
You know, I remember Tom Hardy had this, he had a little mole on his arm, and it had a hair sticking out of it. And I just mindlessly plucked it. And he was furious. He's like, that was my lucky hair. Well, it wasn't that lucky, was it? So, no, it was a great scene he shot after that. And I guess it was his lucky hair. He had a great career.
Matt Settle, ladies and gentlemen, destroyer of Tom Hardy. He's found Bane's Achilles heel. Michael, seriously though, in a way, this is what made the acting dynamic work, right?
I would also say to everybody out there, you know, who sees it, one of the things that's never really addressed is, and we all know this as actors and as male actors and as young male actors, to be that selfless with other male actors, like like they hit the fucking lottery. I mean, that in itself is like, you just don't get that. Like, you get a young actor, male actor, who's trying to make his mark. I mean, it's kind of like there's an element in there that could have taken hold and could have wrecked everything. And to the credit of the men I'm looking at on the screen right now, it did not.
Tim?
And there were one or two notable exceptions that I won't mention out loud, and they were very short-lived. They were little kind of The flash in the pan, so conspicuous for that reason, and so vulgar for that reason.
They took care of
Never done
themselves.
any of this stuff.
Exactly. It's interesting. It burnt itself out.
Mark?
Dale Dye, God bless him, created a space where everybody sort of believed in it. You know, there was nobody was precious, and it was a. I mean, I don't want to say it was a band of brothers on set.
Yes, Rich Speight.
The thing that I think that only we can appreciate, and I think, is how bizarre and unique that experience was. How emotional it was. And you know, I'm going to go back to something Dexter said. I love telling the story. It doesn't involve me at all. It involves this specific one. It's Dexter and Donnie. And I remember those guys. I always use this as an example of how Band of Brothers functioned and why it stands the test of time. Because actors took themselves out of scenes. That didn't happen anywhere. Nobody takes himself off screen.
Right.
So just regardless of if I fought too much, or Tim, you feel like you fought too little, or Matthew feels like you fought too little, or I was, you know, Cudlitz was too mouthy and other people were not mouthy enough, whatever. At the end of the day, everybody's aim was the same.
Right.
And everybody's aim was an egoless pursuit.
Right.
Because I remember, Dex, you guys taking yourself out. I remember because you took yourself out of a thing.
Yeah.
And suddenly they gave me your line because I was like, well, Muck was here. And they're like, great, now you're saying blah, blah, blah. I'm like, okay. You know, because you showed up, walked over, and you literally walked over and you're like, I'm not in this. And you turned and walked away. It wasn't like a big dramatic conversation. I was like, well, there goes, all right.
That does not sound like me. Not for that at all. But I think I think it comes back to what you were saying about earlier. You know, it's like for those of us whose veterans were still around, who we could talk to, and it was you know, shared knowledge. I don't think, you know, if your veteran wasn't alive that we kind of held on to it, but you had an authenticity and an understanding and a knowledge that gave an authenticity to what we were doing and who we were. And because what happened to me, going back to what you said about you know, picking off the scab of something for someone that to us was kind of like a role that we were playing. And the first time I spoke to Johnny, he spoke to me about the first day that he landed in France, hiding in a barn, waiting for some Nazis to come collect some milk from a farm, and the first person that he killed during the war when he was 22 years old. And it opened up. It's like you were saying, he cried, you know, there was tears, and he hung up, and I had to call him back later, and I suddenly realized, oh my God, it's a real thing. For me, I was like, hey, I'm playing soldiers, I'm marching around with a bunch of guys, and I've got a machine gun, and isn't it great? To the reality of, there are real people involved, and that's what's unique about the experiences, because there's so rarely that you get such a human connection to what it is that you do. We can intellectualize it, and we analyze, and we deconstruct, and we kind of, I can do this, and how do I want to? But these people were real, and we suddenly had a massive responsibility to those people. And I think that comes back to what Rich is saying about, you know, his experience, and even Matthew saying about his, because that doesn't go away. That sense of responsibility, that sense of connection to a real person who went through something enormous that we feel like we got an understanding of, because the programs are so fantastic. They connect you as much as they can to the wartime experience through the humanity of these guys and that relationship and how connected and what a band of brothers they really were. That's what makes the war real for us. It's interesting because I remember on the episode The Patrol that David Leland was directing, that he started making decisions about people being on the patrol that weren't. He just started cherry picking characters, and for those of us whose veterans or characters were actually on the patrol, it was kind of like, wow, I've got to start fighting for my place. Fortunately, Randleman, Cudlitz, was like, I'm having none of that. I mean, the English guys were a little bit more kind of like, oh, this is awkward. That's a little bit of a sticky situation. Randleman was like, fuck that. And I remember him going to front Leland and absolutely telling him, in no uncertain terms, these are the men that were on that patrol, and they are the men that should be in that episode. Yeah. And you can't just cherry pick the characters that you like because you want us to have an episode full of those guys. It was these guys, and they're the ones, and it did, and it all reverted back
Dexter,
to what.
I was originally on that. Malarkey was originally on that patrol, and
Yeah.
I was so fucking happy when I found out he wasn't, because that was like 2 weeks of night shoots in the water, right? Sorry.
Yeah.
Rick Warden, you all sacrificed glory to some extent. Did you regret it when you saw it on screen afterwards?
No, I had egoistic ones for a year or two after we made it, and because of what this is, Tim referred to it earlier on, the fact that we're all here now talking about it 20 years after we made it, those regrets disappeared a long time ago. I don't have a single regret. I don't regret a frame of it anymore. For 2 years, I beat myself up with decisions I could have made, and hey, this thing would be really good if only I wasn't in it. I was wrecking this whole flipping battle scene. You know, those things are ludicrous, and we've all had those, I'm sure.
Because the thing about it, at the time, it felt like it was about us, but it's not about us. It's
I don't have
about
that.
us. We have it as a shared experience as a group of actors that we went through something was great, but it's bigger than us. It is. It's about those guys, and we represented those guys. We represent those guys in a big way, in a small way, in a fleeting way, in a a massive way. That's what's so amazing about it. You know, that's the great thing for us. We got to represent them.
Like I represent Malarkey, Ross Liebgott, Speight, whoever you played.
Woody, our Bogfest coordinator.
Historians have been basically lining up to say good things about the show. Veterans have been lining up. I mean, of all wars, all nations, saying, "Oh my God, it's brilliant." You guys are happy to come and talk about it. That doesn't really happen very often. You get the shows that the public like, but the veterans say, no, it's all just Hollywood, or the historians think it's ridiculous. There was really something special that it appealed across the board. And that was all due to the Bale and writers and Tom Hanks and what you guys all brought to it. So it's amazing. It really is.
Sure, Ben?
Yeah, there was definitely a seriousness. I mean, we had a lot of fun, don't get me wrong. We enjoyed each other's company, and there was a lot of laughter. But when we got on set, there was a real sense that we wanted to get that right. We wanted to tell these stories. We wanted to get the authenticity bang on. And as I say, we had a responsibility. We met, those vets, a lot of the guys that were still alive when we were making the show. They came to set, and to see their emotional reaction to us walking around in the uniforms, to the German, to the actors that were portraying the Germans walking around in the uniforms, to seeing those sets, and to see them emotionally affected by the authenticity was quite staggering.
Rene, it was a hard slog on set, wasn't it?
What's funny for me, and it goes along saying with what Mike was saying earlier, and this point, I think we're so young. I mean, I was 30, but this was like my big break, and here I am walking on or marching on this tarmac. We're about 100 yards away from the nearest camera, and then we're marching in our wool and our wool uniforms, and I'm thinking to myself, what the hell am I doing here? I thought I was hired as an actor. I'm a freaking extra, Yeah. I'm like, what the fuck am I doing here? And I'm just like, just miserable, cold in the rain. I'm marching. I don't really know what I'm doing because everybody else has been marching beforehand. I'm there new, kind of. I'm just bitching and moaning. And Bull he goes to me, Rene, what the fuck are you talking? What are you complaining about? You're getting paid to be in this miniseries as an actor. You could be back home flipping burgers, doing whatever the fuck you're doing. And at that moment, my whole perspective of what I was there for completely changed. And I give a lot to Mike just because he just put me back. He just put me in my place, and I was like, thank you. Yes, I could be on a roof, roofing a house. I could be in a freaking attic, which I was. Doing this whole flooring in this attic in 110-degree heat, When I got the call that I got the job. So I was like, yes, I'm blessed. Even though it's cold and miserable, so that definitely,
You were cold and miserable and employed at that point.
And at that point, I was extremely grateful for what I got. Yeah, definitely. One of my favorite moments.
Ben, did you have work to do in the evenings too?
And I also remember in early days, we were given a lot of research material. I mean, I remember being given a whole pack of research about Walter Gordon when I was at boot camp. And when I had the opportunity, which wasn't very often, I used to sit on my bed and just kind of read through it. We had all the transcripts from Stephen Ambrose's interviews. And that was really special to be able to kind of go through that with a fine tooth comb. And it was, you know, I mean, to have that much research for an actor is just like, you know, it's like gold dust. You can just, you know, almost inhale all of that detail. And then when we started doing, you know, some of the scenes, we could then say, well, actually in the research material, this is what Gordon actually said. This is what I should be wearing in this particular scene. This is what, you know, as far as he was concerned, this is what happens. So we were able to dictate to a certain extent some of that detail over to the directors who came in for 1 or 2 episodes. And I remember having a conversation with Phil Alden Robinson, who directed episode 1, because obviously he had sort of arrived quite late. So I think Steven Spielberg was due to direct the first episode, and then he had to pull out. So Phil was a bit of a late entry. And I remember going in one by one and having a conversation with Phil, and he sort of said, you know, talk to us, you know, give us any information that you've picked up over the last few weeks. And I just remember sort of being able to kind of, you know, reel off a whole load of detail about some of the research that I was reading, and you know, that was really useful.
For some of you, it was over midway through. How did it feel to leave everyone behind? Peter O'Meara, who played Lieutenant Dyke.
The worst thing was going home. I didn't want to go home. I just wanted to be there all the time. And when I could, I would ask to come in on days off just so I could watch and learn, because there's a lot to learn.
Mark, of course, poor Dukeman dies.
Yeah, it was really sad. I mean, I had to go back maybe 3 weeks later to do some pickup shots, and obviously the production had moved on by then. And it was weird walking back onto the set, just seeing everybody, and then also seeing people that had been killed in between my time of leaving and going back to do the pickup shots. And I was like, "So where is so and so?" And they're like, "Oh, he's dead." And it was kind of, it was freaky. I mean, it was a very, I don't know, emotional production to be on, because everybody took it very seriously. And yeah, when people died, they were missed.
Ben, you're another one whose character was written out in line with real events.
Yeah, it was difficult. I think, I mean, one of the last scenes that I shot was pretty much the last scenes in Bastogne anyway, for Gordon when he got injured in the foxhole. So that was a very emotional, they were very emotional scenes to play anyway. So it was almost like, you know, the emotional stuff I had to do kind of on set in the scenes, being dragged out of the foxhole and then being rushed off to the aid station, you know, was very emotional to play. But it was also emotional because we knew, well, the guys that knew that they were finishing on set were sort of saying goodbye to this sort of epic sort of situation that we'd been in for however many months. And I mean, they shot out of sequence. So I was there for, I can't remember it in all, probably about 4 of the 6 months. And it was very emotional to leave. But again, just to have been part of it was just special in itself. I mean, it must have been difficult for Bart because he'd only just arrived, and episode 3 is very early on. But to have done sort of 6 out of the 10 was special, to just have been part of it and to have formed those kind of bonds. And as I say, I think when I left, I can't remember what I went back to do. I think I went back and I was busy doing some stuff anyway, so that took me out of that headspace for a while. And then we had the wrap party. So we all called back and we got back together, and it was all as if we'd never kind of left. So it was emotional to leave, but you know, it was one of those things that, you know, you were just really grateful to have been there in the first place.
Bart Ruspoli, you played Ed Tipper, and you were the first to go in episode 3, really, of the main guys. How did that feel?
Awful. That's the truth. It was really awful. It wasn't. You know, Ed was the first. I think he was the first Toccoa man to sort of, you know, leave the war. But it was absolutely awful, because again, you've done all the boot camp, and you've been a part of this thing, and we created this bond between all of us. That's why we're here today. You know, in literally in 10 days, or 11 or 12 or 13, however everyone remembers it. But yeah, it wasn't. I remember this apprehension, this dread of like, oh shit, this is, you know, I'm out of here after that. And the thing is, it's like this in every show that everyone's ever done. It's, when you're done, you're like, that's it, bye, you're done, end of. But it was different for this because you're like, because of that bond, you didn't want it. I didn't want it. It was awful. It was fucking traumatic. I remember sitting at home thinking, oh God. And then there was the last scene I shot was just in the aid station after Ed's hit, and just lying there. And you're thinking, oh, maybe, and it's not even like, oh, maybe they'll write in another scene for me. No, because Ed was Ed was out of there. He got blown up. He was gone. And it just, it was absolutely terrible. And I'm sure all the diehard fans know that at the time Shane Taylor was sleeping on my sofa while we were shooting the series. And so he'd go out and come back. Oh, it's great, we did this, and I'd be sitting at home there, just, a bit like lockdown, in a pair of boxer shorts, eating cereal all day long, watching daytime TV, thinking, I should be there. And it was awful. It really was. It was properly traumatic.
Yeah, three is harsh, isn't it? It's just long enough to get you into the groove and friends with everybody, and then like kicking you out the door.
But we shot one, and then we shot three, and then we shot two as well. So it was like for me it was bang. I was in the groove, and then straight away out.
Oh wow!
And it was and I think I did one day on the jump at the beginning, and that was it. It was, but we shot that. It was overlapping. So I remember the last thing I shot. The last thing I shot was definitely the last scene. My last day on set was the aid station thing. Although I did get called back to train some of the replacement SAs that came in. So they sort of got me in. I can't remember who I did it with. Someone else. I can't remember who it was. I want to say Matt Leitch. I can't remember. And we sort of just got called in and said, "You guys fancy training some of the guys, some of the new SAs?"
Really?
So I sort of implemented, so we implemented some of the stuff we'd learned at boot camp, and we trained about 20 SAs one day.
Yes, Ross, you want to add something?
The one thing that I remember about Bart was because he was the first Tacoma man to leave the show. That was the first time for me, and I'm sure some of the other boys, where one of our guys was going, and it was like, it was too early for us even, and it was like, what do you mean he's got? I mean, we knew what was going to happen to Tipper, we'd all read the book, we knew the scripts, but I mean, I remember the day, we did the big blow up scene, and the fact that we were losing one of our Tacoma men was like a real slog for all of us, because it sucked. We're like, this is going to happen throughout the show. Throughout the show, we're going to lose our buddies. Nowhere near as dramatic as the real events,
but still some kind of semblance of loss, isn't it?
You keep coming out with us, Bart, like over a weekend. And
Because Shane was living on my sofa, so at the weekends I'd always.
But they couldn't not invite you then, could they?
That'd be fucking shitty. It was almost. The thing is, it was almost worse. It was like, and they'd be and they'd be talking about shit that happened on set, and I'd be like, felt left out.
Well, we were talking to Jamie Bamber last night about getting killed off in Hornblower, and he said that it just isn't the done thing to go and hang around like a loser on set after you've been killed off either.
Oh, really?
I would have done it if it was near enough.
Every job. That's why they're sticking me in.
He wasn't on boot camp.
yeah, exactly.
No, I didn't go back to the set. I never went back to the set. No, that would have been.
You would just meet us. Yeah, you would just meet us at the weekend. That was it.
Yeah, I'd come out on Friday and Saturday night and stuff.
Speaking of social life, you lot tore up London at the weekends, didn't you? Dexter, Fletcher.
They lived in the UK for over a year. These guys, they all moved up lock, stock, and barrel to the. They all had their apartments dotted around all over town. They brought their families, and everybody came, didn't they? I mean, it was a big undertaking for the Yanks. They sort of closed up home and moved over. They all had flats, different apartments around the city. Frank John Hughes was in Gloucester Road or something. I don't know where you guys were. I don't remember.
Yes, Jimmy.
Scotty, you didn't have a kid at that time yet, right?
Scott? My daughter turned Speight. You were at my daughter's first birthday.
I was.
The day after we got out of boot camp.
Wow. Okay. Because I know Cudlitz and obviously Hughes had kids. And they had them out there. I mean, we'd be out running amok and drinking all night, and those guys like, nah, I got to head back at the kids, and we were like, what?
Yeah.
Rich, go ahead.
There were definitely two factions having very different experiences because the majority of the single guys lived on Marsham Street, in that.
Right.
I don't remember the name of the building. What was the building, Jimmy?
I don't know. It was a great spot, though. I loved it.
What about downtime on set?
Football out in the field, like there was a field of really long grass, and there was like a football field.
Scott, yeah.
And there was a video. It was a VCR too, right? You remember that story of Donnie Wahlberg?
What? Oh yeah. What was it?
One of the special ability extras brought in a tape of the New Kids on the Block in concert and put it on that VCR.
I don't remember that.
Donnie ejected it, smashed it on the ground.
I just remember the Brits all playing football, and then there was some little basketball action going on as well. And
there was
watching Rick Warden try to dribble was a great source of amusement.
He's an excellent basketball player, and he acquitted himself beautifully. He was sailed through the air like Jordan. He was amazing.
Jimmy, go for it.
It was almost as fun as watching all the Brits have to learn to play baseball for episode 9. I mean, how to throw out. They made Martin the pitcher.
Oh God, that was just.
You guys were so nervous, like
so
you guys
bad.
were walking around with like your gloves and your ball. You wanted to practice and practice.
Yeah.
And practice. And that's, I remember it. So.
Even to this day, when I watch it, I'm like, trying to throw a tub of Jello or something. It's like I don't know what the fuck I'm doing.
I have
Rich again.
I have 3 boys, and my youngest is 8, and so he's learning basketball, and that's a recurring chant at the house. Is that no matter dribbles with 2 hands, picks up and runs with it, I say, well, you're still better than Rick Warden. That's like for me.
Rick, have you got any comeback for this?
The truth is, I can remember the Americans playing ball, whether it was they either, I mean, when we were in Bastogne like a few years ago, Jimmy, I remember you and Rick Gomez fucking shotgunning that flipping American football around in Foy when we were supposed to be being sensible. The Americans, for some reason, just were handier sport-wise. Maybe it's because of the sports that we were mucking around with were American. By and large.
Who had the
handball?
The handball.
Tim, go ahead.
Bouncing off the wall, hit me in the bollocks one day.
I did?
Really hard. That hurt a lot.
Yeah, as I'm getting older, man, I'm hearing a lot of stories about me doing it. I was a little prick, wasn't I?
No. You
don't think you did it deliberately. That would have been an impressive shot. I think it was an accident. At least I hope it was a fucking accident.
The way Jimmy sort of said, oops, made you think it was an accident.
Back to the filming. You actually got quite a lot of leeway. Isn't that right, Peter?
It's one of the rare occasions where if lines didn't specifically work, Damien would kind of switch it to make it fit better. You know what I mean? There was like a bit more loose, like, okay, that doesn't quite work. Why don't we say this? You know what I mean? Where normally writers have the last say on what you say and how it goes. But on this, because we were so deep in the situation, as we actively kept moving, then, if the line didn't work, we were allowed to kind of come up with something that sort of kept the energy going. So a lot of the scenes really work because of the actors who were involved and their relationships that have all been worked out, and the energy, like the connectivity, the magnetism between everyone. That's actually what's sizzling the scenes and moving it forward.
Nolan Hemmings is with us. He played Sergeant Grant. I know Paul has a question for you.
Were you a bit annoyed that Chuck Grant's story wasn't told in the end of episode 10? Because he had an amazing story. I mean, he was paralyzed. He had his own business. He was the 506th representative at the 101st Airborne Association. Would you have liked to have seen his story told at the end?
I mean, I would have liked his story to be told a lot more throughout, but you just can't tell everyone's story to that much detail. You spread everyone out too thin. I think the focus of the producers, the way it was written, was to focus on these key characters and to flesh out as much as they could the other ones that weren't really part of the main narrative of the story. And I was amazed how many people they did cover. I mean, you really got a sense of a lot of the Easy Company men from the series. They did get a lot of time, each of them, but it's just not long enough to flesh everyone out efficiently. And I think that Chuck could have got a bit more of the story told, being that he was a very well-loved member of Easy Company and also a staff sergeant, and went from the very beginning of D-Day right to the end of the war pretty much unscathed. So, he got to the end, and then he got shot in the head, which is the irony of it. It's sort of terrible for him, but survived that. I mean, that's a pretty amazing story in itself. So I think that I think possibly what was missed for him was a little bit more of how much he was a part of the Easy Company. You know, the longer term Easy Company men who went from D-Day to the end. And they did show obviously him being shot in the head. But I don't know if the audience really connected with him enough for that to really hit home as much as it could have possibly in the story. But again, didn't feel at all at the end of it when it was all, when they were doing those parts in episode 10 that he didn't get a say, because it's just, you've got too many guys to cover. You can't cover everyone.
Michael, tell us about the scene with the Dutch farmer.
Yeah, that was, nobody spoke English. I don't know if anybody, like you guys, actually, nobody else was there, so nobody else knows. All you motherfuckers were out doing the photo shoot.
I feel your pain, Michael. I feel your pain.
The gentleman who, and I wish I remembered his name. He played the farm owner. He's some huge Dutch actor. Somebody out there might know, or if they're able to look it up quickly. A couple of people walked up and they're like, "Oh my God, you know who you're working with?" I was like, "No," and they'd say he's an incredibly respected Dutch actor. Done a tremendous amount of theater in Holland and the Netherlands, and he was just amazing. And the idea, or the fact that he couldn't speak any English, literally made that scene completely come alive, because I was trying to communicate with him and he was trying to communicate with me without speaking the language. And it literally, David Nutter, God bless him, just shot it. That was possibly one of the easiest scenes to shoot, because we were just playing the circumstances as they were happening in real time with somebody who did not speak my language and I didn't speak their language.
Yes, Peter Youngblood-Hills, who played Shifty Powers. You've got his name, haven't you?
Jack Wooters. Jack Wooters.
Yeah, Jack Wooters.
Yeah, I
think you're pronouncing the name.
Wooters.
Yes.
Yeah, man. His awards and nominations section is quite
yeah.
It's got a lot of best actors.
Yeah. He was terrific. And he was like a mountain. I mean, the guy, for me, I'm 6'2", and I remember standing up and I'm like, looking up at the guy. There's not too many people I physically have to tilt my head up to look up to, and he was one of them. And he's about as wide as he was tall, and possibly one of the most gentle souls you'd ever want to meet. It was really wonderful working with both of them.
Michael, you want to talk about battle scenes?
Do you remember on the dike in episode 5 when the Germans were coming over the hill?
Yeah.
That to me was one of the most sort of surreal things to shoot, because you'd actually be tracking a German that you were going to fire at, because they were like, pick a target and fire. And then you'd fire, and then the fucking guy would drop.
Yeah.
300 yards away. And you're just like, holy shit, I just killed somebody. For me, it was a really, really bizarre feeling to just, keep reloading and finding people and shooting out in the distance, and then seeing them, in the same frame, in the same shot, and continuously coming over the hill, to see them just dropping in the distance. To me, that was probably the closest I'll ever get to that type of situation. Knock on wood, dear God, I hope so. But it was very real in a weird way. Did anyone else sort of feel that was there? Am I crazy?
Yes, George, go for it.
I mean, yeah, I'm crazy.
I got that in Bastogne, Michael. Absolutely, man. On the machine gun when I took over from Smokey, and you saw they just dropped. You pull the trigger and they dropped. It was
and it's like, what?
Yes, Matt.
Nolan, was it you in boot camp when I shot next to you and you screamed at me for like shooting in your ear? And
No, that wasn't.
Who was that? Tommy? Was that Tommy?
I think it was. Yeah. Well, it wouldn't have been me. I never minded any of that.
Okay. It's the funniest thing, because here we are in battle, and the guy's like, "Excuse me, that was in my ear."
What do you think it's going to be?
Nolan, you're a bit of a thrill seeker. You must have loved it.
Yeah, I had a couple of moments that I saw where it was like, "Ooh, that was a bit close," But of course, you just get on with it because you don't focus on what that moment is. It's not the moment that's happening. So you're just like, you know, unless they stop filming right there, you just keep going. You're just like, oh, and then you carry on.
That's a little tiny facsimile of what it must have been like, a bit, right? I know it's nothing really like it, but you survive and you carry on with the next moment. I mean, presumably, I can put myself to what maybe people went through in those situations. Were those chaotic fake battles, which weren't dangerous, but they were unpredictable and they were noisy. One of the most unpredictable things was what other people were going to do. I knew I wasn't going to die or get injured seriously or wounded. I may be projecting here and saying that this is how you should have felt, but I definitely felt that.
The funny thing was, you know, there's obviously always somebody who they're focusing on key characters in any one of the episodes, and those key characters are ultimately, you know, there's a narrative going through that particular episode, which really, you know, some people have more of a focus than others. And what I did notice, which I think I noticed also the absolute converse with other actors, was that I didn't even know where the camera was and didn't really care. I was like, I'm doing this, I'm going that way, that's our objective, this is what we're up to. And then, you know, and I do remember during filming the difference between those of us who were very much in the moment and just living that scene and doing it properly, and those who were showboating and being really close to the camera. And I'm not talking about scenes where the camera's focused on them, that's different. It's when we're all just doing a wide, or there's maybe one, and you can tell that there's some of the actors were a little bit more like slowing down to make sure that the camera is on them, and I guess that's the kind of being an actor, you know, is that you are supposed to be on camera, because if you don't get seen, it's not really happening. And I think for me, and I didn't have a huge amount in the show, and I guess I was kind of very much just doing everything in that way, you know, and I didn't really ever know where the camera was. So yeah, that was kind of an interesting side of it. It was, the experience for me was much more than I think is seen in the actual show. You know, I was there all the time from the very beginning to the very end. I was there pretty much everywhere. See when you can find me. You know, I did 9 months of filming. There's a handful of moments where Chuck Grant is really
similar for me.
Yeah, but for me the experience was just extraordinary, and I loved it. And looking at it now, or even just afterwards, and being like, well, I'm hardly in it, that really didn't make any difference to me whatsoever.
That concludes our episode today. Join us tomorrow when we will continue to talk about filming with the cast of Band of Brothers. Don't forget, you can become a patron of History Hack for as little as $1 a month by going to www.historyhack.podbean.com. We'd really appreciate it, and it would enable us to keep recording after the coronavirus crisis is over. And obviously, don't forget to follow us at hack_history on Twitter, and it's the same on Instagram, and we also have a Facebook page as well. There now follows a public service announcement.
I'm Horatio Hornblower. And I'm Archie Kennedy. The simplest gift you can give in these troubled times is to obey orders.
Indeed. The regulations are very clear in the matter. It is the duty of all of us to remain at anchor until the little people in the talking box signal you otherwise.
You don't want to end up getting flogged.
Good day to you.
Good day to you both.